Hello, BookTube. I had a couple of subjects converge in my mind yesterday, and I thought I'd tell you all about it. One of the subjects was our just finished 7.3K Q&A that I did on this channel. We've fallen into the habit of doing a Q&A session every time I reach a double zero plateau. God knows what we'll do if we reach triple zeros again. But it's a little self-indulgent, but you all seem to love it, and I certainly do. And I had a blast doing that 7.3K Q&A. And that subject was rattling around in my mind yesterday when another, apparently unrelated subject also came to the fore. I was emailing back and forth with a young friend of mine. Well, he's in his late 40s, so he's not young anymore. But he was young when I found him. That's my only excuse. He was young when I first met him. I was emailing back and forth with him about book reviewing. He was in the middle of a review that he's doing, I think, for the Denver Post. And I was doing the preliminary groundwork for a review that I'll be doing for the Boston Globe, I believe. I'm not sure of either of those venues, because both of us are freelance book reviewers. So we go wherever. We go wherever there's a brief, wherever we can get a door even opened a little bit for us. And we were talking back and forth about what it's like to do that. We have very different work routines. I am a very fast writer. I'm not all that fast a preparer. I prepare my reviews same as anybody does. Do the preliminary work, sometimes do a lot more preliminary reading than you might think, and a lot more than a lot of other reviewers are able to do, because not everybody has all the time in the world. And I kind of do. I'm a professional book reviewer. I don't do anything else. So we were talking about that, about our different work methods, and about our different editors, and about our word counts. And we got around eventually in the course of this email exchange. One of the great things about email as opposed to snail mail is that you can have a whole month's worth of exchange on a particular subject in the course of one day, instead of waiting for these things and follow-up things to show they're up in the mail. And one of the things we got to talking about in that correspondence was how much fun it was. How much fun it was to write a review for an audience, as opposed to what it feels like if you write a review, for instance, for a blog or something, or if you write a review for a corporate site like Goodreads or Amazon, where you don't know how many people are reading, and you don't know if they're reading it for you. They're coming for the book. They're not necessarily coming for you. Whereas if you're writing for an audience, especially if it's a venue where you've written before, there's a thrill in that. There's a high wire kind of thrill in that, because you are laying your reputation on the line. You are going to judge a work, its merits, its lack thereof, its accessibility, its value for the price, its place in the author's canon. You're going to be judging all of that in a very limited space for an audience. And if you're wrong, if you're way off base, then you'll look the fool. And not just for your readers. We've all seen anthologies that are composed entirely of contemporary book reviews of books that went on to become classics, where the contemporary book reviewer just didn't get it. Or whether they got it or not, the judgment of posterity was drastically the other than what they said, whether they were right or wrong. And my friend and I were writing back and forth about this, and we were bellyaching. Of course, you always find things to bellyache about. Don't have enough words. Maybe you've got a censorious editor, or an editor who's dilatory, so you're breaking your behind to get a piece done in time, and then they're not going to look at it for a few days or a week or more than that. And we were also bellyaching, as freelancers do, about rates of pay versus the amount of work you do, and whatnot. My friend has a teaching job, and so he is not a full-time professional book reviewer. So he can't devote huge amounts of time to laying groundwork research for a review, especially if he knows he's never going to use it, that he doesn't have enough words to use it, or that he has too much to say about the book itself to worry about research. I myself tend to overdo that aspect of it, just because I want to know. I want to know that every I is dotted and T is crossed before I get up on that high wire. But we ended up our correspondence yesterday by saying how much fun that high wire is, how much fun that is to do. Which is why people keep coming back to it. You can read memoirs going back to George Gissing, going back to the early Victorian years. You can read memoirs of people going back and back to the craft of reviewing, going back and back to that job. You get a book in the mail and you assess it. And often you don't have all the time in the world to do that, and you've only got so much space. It's a challenge and a thrill. And it's also sometimes can be a little pocket money. Although plenty of those people going back 150, 180 years worked for the book or just for the byline. Plenty of times with names you know very well, very people that went on to become very famous on their own. Plenty of times that work was done without remuneration. I know the typical always trotted out quote here is from Samuel Johnson, that only a blockhead writes except for money. That is not true. It was not true in Johnson's case. It's not true in the world either. But we ended up our correspondence by saying how much fun it is to do this, how much fun it is as an occupation, which is why a lot of professional historians and essayists and novelists and whatnot keep going back to that job even after they don't need to anymore. A famous recent example would be Christopher Hitchens, who made a pile of money from his God-bashing book, God is Not Great. A pile of money. Enough money so that he could start talking about the trust funds for his children and their children's children. So he did not need the 150 quid for a book review, but he kept it up. He was working on book reviews the day he died because it gets in your blood. You become part of, as I always put it, you become part of a broader conversation. There's a conversation that happens around books. It happens in a few different rooms in a house. Picture it that way. And one of those rooms is only the critics. There's a much larger conversation that happens among readers, where readers are talking about a book, reading it, going on sites like Goodreads or Amazon where the reviews are not formal, where it's just people responding to what they've read. And that's great. It's fantastic that now has an electronic version so that those readers can enjoy that as opposed to just among their own circle. But there's another, like I mentioned, another of those rooms is the critical conversation around a book, where an editor somewhere has agreed to let you join that conversation, and you will be that venue's contribution to that conversation. That's an enormous amount of fun. And my friend and I were talking about how at the end of the day, that is the draw for this, is that it feels a little different. It feels a little different than the general readerly conversation if you are part of the critical conversation about a book. That feels a little different. It's extremely rewarding, even in its most frustrating. And those two subjects, my 7.3K Q&A and that conversation that I had about reviewing. That conversation that I had about reviewing is not unique. I have that all the time with lots and lots of people. I've been reviewing for a long time. And before I was reviewing for a long time, I wasn't reviewing. And then before I wasn't reviewing, I was, again, reviewing for a long time. You put those two things together, you get a lot of book reviews. So it's a subject that comes up with friends of mine, especially who are also book reviewers. But those two subjects came together. The 7.3K Q&A, a large number of those questions are from people who weren't around at 7K. They certainly weren't around at 6K or 3K or 1K. It's only a small cadre of you people who are certifiably insane enough to have been here right from the beginning. I couldn't live without you. But in order to have a 7.3K Q&A, necessarily you have to have hundreds of new people. People who are new to the channel, who have not heard every bit of patter. I had an email from somebody just the other day who said, I just found your channel about a month ago. I've been loving your videos. I always love hearing that because I love talking to you. And this person said, in the video that I watched a month ago or whenever it was, you showed your little dog Frida, and she is adorable, and I love watching her in your videos. But you also, in that video for the first time, I haven't watched your whole back catalog. It's about 3,500 videos. This person said, I haven't watched your whole back catalog, but in that video a month ago, was the first time I heard you mention that you had other dogs on this channel. And I went and found them. I dove into your back videos and looked through the thumbnails and found them. I found a video with your old dogs in them, and they were the sweetest thing. And it was that this person wrote to me and said, what an amazing thing it must be for your longtime viewers to have lived through that. day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, so that they're not going back into old videos to see you on a couch with a white old basset hound on top of you. They remember that. What a thing that must be. And we had a great correspondence back and forth about how honored I am, how incredibly wonderful that is and has been to have that. But necessarily, there are going to be a lot of those people if you hit 7.3K or 7.4K next weekend or whenever it's going to be. And those two things got me thinking that it's been a while since I've raised the subject of book reviewing on this channel or made anything explicit. I wanted to do that in this video just briefly, although when I say just briefly, I mean it in the same basically Irish context as Jason Harrigan does, where he says at minute 20 of a 40-minute video, at minute 20 he'll say, well, that's just about it, don't have much more to say. And then 40 minutes later he says, oh, well, I've lost the light now, the sun's gone down, so I guess I'll stop. Same thing with me. Briefly is an odd code word for both of us here. And there are a few other booktubers I could name that are also the same way. When you put them in front of a camera, they have the gift of gab. But I wanted to make a video today responding to the combination of those two things. I want to specifically say, especially to newcomers, but also to older people who've been watching this channel for a while. I am an editor at an online literary journal called Open Letters Review. Open Letters Review is a few years old, and it is the successor to another online literary journal called Open Letters Monthly, where I was the managing editor for 10 years. And I was also one of the 3 founders of that journal. And Open Letters Monthly punched above its weight in terms of critical respect, in terms of the notice that it got. And there were a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons was that one of our editors is my friend Sam Sachs, who is the fiction chronicler for the Wall Street Journal. That's fairly prominent platform in the book reviewing world. Another one of those reasons probably was me, because I have been the Virginia Creeper. I have been the kudzu around the book reviewing world forever. If there's a book that comes to your mind, chances are I've reviewed it somewhere for someone. And there were a couple of others. There were a couple of other we had the third founding editor, John Cotter, had written an extremely good debut collection of short stories, Under the Small Lights, which I recommend. And that just continued. Those were little reasons. The main reason was the quality of the prose that we published, month after month, for Open Letters Monthly. And that has continued to be true with Open Letters Review, which has a slightly different masthead. Sam and I are still there. We've added a few other names, including a couple of booktubers that you would know, and a Yale Divinity student, can't do without one of those. No Gathering is complete without one of those, and a few other people. And Open Letters Review continues to punch above its weight in terms of critical notice. We show up on book blurbs. We show up on book review aggregator sites like Muck Rack. We get noticed because we write really solid reviews of substantial books. Formal reviews. So not the kind of thing, I love them, but they are radically different kind of thing that you get on someplace like Amazon, where the person says, I just rolled out of bed, still got a toothache, started this book, didn't really like this character at first, reminded me of so-and-so from high school. Okay, all right, okay, fine. I read through a lot of those things. I find them absolutely fascinating because I've had those conversations with people. That's what they are, basically. They're what did you think of this book? Well, here's what I thought of this book. They're not formal book review. And on Open Letters Monthly and now on Open Letters Review, we run formal book reviews. And it occurred to me in confluence of those two subjects that I haven't mentioned in a while, that Open Letters Review is an ongoing concern. And if you are someone who wants to write book reviews, it's not the easiest craft in the world to break into. There are worse ways to do that than to raise your hand in the comments field or email me. I leave my email on every video, and let me know that. It occurred to me that there are enough of you who are new to this channel so that you might not have ever had that formulated to you by me explicitly. So I'm doing that now, especially when it comes to contemporary fiction. We have a handful of regular reviewers at Open Letters Review. I, of course, am one of them. And I'm perfectly willing to admit that I skew a little towards nonfiction. Olive, at a book Olive, skews a little towards nonfiction. Perfectly willing, perfectly able to write a review of fiction, but skews a little towards nonfiction. Peg, from the History Shelf, also exclusively nonfiction, and a handful of other people who have done this. But contemporary fiction, the contemporary, upper middle class Connecticut divorce, made up stories that so many of you read exclusively, that not so much. We don't have many people coming forward to review that kind of stuff, and it comes out, as you must know, in abundance every month. There are an abundance of new titles every month. If you were really industrious about it, you could probably write an 800-word review of every major house general interest history title to come out in a month. There have been months, many months, in the last 15 years when I have done that. But fiction, there's no way that you could do it. Even contemporary fiction, there's no way that you could do it. MFA fiction, there's that much of it. And I know that a lot of people out there read only that. But I haven't put the word out. It's partially my fault. I wanted to stress that if you want to try reviewing that stuff, Open Letters Review is a wonderful first step in the door, especially if you want a career, even a side career out of this. You have to start somewhere, and the way to do that, the way to start is not with the editor of The Atlantic calling you on the phone and personally asking you to write a piece of your reflections on Walden Pond or whatever. The way to do that is to hustle. The way to do that is to write a lot of reviews so that you have what in my day was a clip file, was called a clip file. Now it's, a portfolio of pieces. The way to do that is with grind, to use the YouTube weightlifting crowd favorite word, is to grind out reviews. And once upon a time, in the freelance reviewing world, there were always people who were hungry to do that. They were hungry to break in. And if that was what was required of them, to do that work and to grind out that, to hustle after that work, they were happy to do it. Sam has often commented that once upon a time, the preferred venue for that were the free city weeklies that once proliferated in cities all across the country, where in addition to that city's newspapers, backed by subscription ads and paying princely fees, there were also free city weeklies that still wanted to run original content and needed that content, and you could break into reviewing that way. Those don't largely exist anymore, but Open Letters is here. And I, of course, as one of the editors, have noticed that we don't run a lot of contemporary fiction reviews. So I wanted to make sure to draw those two things together for you in a video. If you want to break into book reviewing for the fun of it, and also for the potential down the line, Open Letters does not pay for book reviews. But a string of Open Letters reviews will certainly get you an audience, a chance, a foot in the door at a venue that does pay for book reviews. And we have many people in the course of Open Letters Monthly and in the course of Open Letters Review who can testify to that does in fact work, that is in fact the only way that it works. Is you have to do a lot of work first to show that you can do a lot of work. So I wanted to make sure that I put out a formal invitation. If you want to try that, well, you know how to reach me. You don't even have to. In the past on this channel, when I would call for reviewers, I would say sound off in the comments field, but you can just email me. Now I put my email on every video, and I would love to chat about it with you. The nonstop flow of review copies obviously has been affected by the pandemic. You've all seen that because I don't have 10-book mail hauls on this channel every day anymore. But the books are still out there. They're still available through places like NetGalley or Edelweiss, and also through me. And I'd be happy to help. So I wanted to put a formal call out there. This is the freelancing life, as people who have entered that freelance life, many of whom have done so through Open Letters Monthly and through Open Letters Review, and long before there was an Open Letters Monthly, a great many of them also entered that world just through me. They can attest that it's a lot of fun. It's a lot that don't get me wrong, Goodreads, Amazon, that sort of thing, that kind of person-to-person discussion is invaluable, and it's unprecedented, and it's an enormous amount of fun in its own right. But there's an extra kind of fun in joining the formal critical conversation on a book. I can't really explain it until you've tried it. But once you've experienced it, you will want to keep experiencing it. That was my point with well-established and well-birthed and well-moneyed figures who still continue to do book reviews for the whole of their life, even when they don't need the little bit of money that you can sometimes get. They still continue to do it because once you're part of that conversation, you want to stay part of that conversation. I've heard in my life, I've known almost nobody who voluntarily walked away from it. So I wanted to put out a call in this video. If you want to write book reviews, especially of contemporary fiction, if that's all that you read, I'd be happy to talk about the subject with you. Open letters, I will leave a link to it down below. We also have, thanks to my friend Amakai, we have a fantastic app that you can download free. Just go to your favorite app store, no matter what it is, and type in Open Letters Review. It's a free app, and it will update, and it is amazing. But I'll leave all that information down below, and if you're interested, let me know. Because I hadn't mentioned this in quite some time, and there are quite a few of you who are new. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. Just a brief reminder that this avenue, this door, this foot in the door is available to you. And if some of you, I imagine, want to write, if not for a living, then for a side living. Well, here's a way to do it. Here's a good start to make. And people have done that. It's not just that I'm saying this is a potential thing. People have done it and would be willing to testify to that fact. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. That was all this video was, just an appointed reminder and a pointed invitation. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.